So the Denver Northern Treatment Plant, it's a large site located in metropolitan Denver. It'll be a new wastewater treatment plant set to a capital cost of roughly $275 million in a design build. It'll be operational around 2016, and it's going to be targeting 24 million gallons per day. Now, the treatment is designed to account for future changes in effluent limits, such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and disinfection, and the approaches with respect to how biosolids are going to be managed and treated within the region. Now, I'm not a process engineer, so I won't be getting into details of those. The design is also meant to facilitate future expansion with minimal service disruption, which is always critical with a treatment plant, because you can never take a plant down in order to modify and adjust. One of the items with this plant is it was envisioned as an asset to the community. So people want to be brought to the plant to understand it, to see it, to embrace it, to see how it interacts with the community and what it's giving back. So there was an architectural theme that was applied as what they call pavilion-type shopping areas. So they wanted to take that style, which is prevalent around the area, and apply that to the many facilities that are housed within the overall program. There's going to be a visitor center and administration building to help funnel people through the site and understand what they're going to see prior to going to see it. Wetlands and a natural effluent channel were used to actually harness the treated water and allow it to build into the landscape prior to being placed or sent out of the site. They connected the site to the bicycle path as well as to the integration as to how people can get into and out of the sites as well. Noise and odor were critical, and it's always an item with a wastewater treatment plant, how to minimize particularly odor control so it doesn't exfiltrate to the rest of the surrounding community. And well, the secondary road was an item we'll show in a moment here. This is one of the images of the plant itself. The material selection and the style of the architecture was selected to try to match and encompass that which is prevalent around. You can see one of the effluent water lagoons and treatment holding areas. This is the site itself, and I think I got a laser here. So you can see this was the main access road, and they wanted to disrupt any and all additional traffic to and from that road into the site. So the design of the plant was off of an off-road in order to minimize that impact. And when you come in, there would be access to the visitor center to embrace you into the site, to make you understand what's going to occur. And then there's the administration building before the treatment continues up the rest of the site. So the Bentley tools that were used were many of them. And the reason for that is CH2M HILL is a multidiscipline design and construction organization, so we carry all disciplines within. So critical was first establishing the platform as a consistent platform across the entire program. ProjectWise was heavily deployed, complete with ProjectWise web parts and web reporting tools that we customized internally for CH2M HILL. An example there would be, we want to see a drawing list. Well, what's the easiest way to see a drawing list of 2,800 files, right? Click a button, see a list. So we basically wrote a routine that would read the SQL database, show us everything designated as a deliverable or a sheet file, and portray to us the drawing list. And we linked that to our Oracle web parts in order to allow anybody anybody in the firm really to access our Oracle project site and get a peer into the ProjectWise database. Navigator and MicroStation are our prime platform. Bentley building was utilized. This project started prior to the release of EcoSim, or else EcoSim would have been far superior with respect to the ability to quantify areas and volumes of materials, but we made do with Bentley building. PlantSpace XM was in deployment for our piping models, and that's where we're looking at migration to the OpenPlant world for piping, but we're still in that process. So all of the intelligent piping was done via PlantSpace. OpenPlant P&ID was a huge success for us. We were able to provide intelligent PFDs and later P&IDs for the entire process treatment, and we were able to generate valve lists and instrument lists and then compare those back to the PlantSpace model. So that was huge for us. Bentley Raceway and cable management was actually deployed on the same day that we started design of this treatment plant last year at this conference. Actually, it was when it was deployed. So we immediately put that into production and developed and utilized intelligent parametric cable trays, which we are now looking on how to populate the cable trays with information from intelligent electrical schematics. And finally, InRoads was utilized for development of DTMs for our existing and modified site. So ProjectWise was huge for us, and it facilitated our ability to collaborate. We utilized 20 CH2M HILL offices across North America and some international. And the hardest part there was ensuring consistency and accuracy of data, and that's what ProjectWise brought to the table for us. There were 42 unique facilities, all requiring IFC and iModel deliveries to the client. We had 3 external entities as well, and that was a unique challenge because those external entities not only brought their own tools to the table, but the requirement for clear and accurate and robust valid data. So we had to make sure that was facilitated. As I said, 2,800 sheet files encompassing part of 15,000 files and that much information. So it was a tremendous endeavor to ensure that all offices, both internal and external, were all receiving the accurate and consistent data that they needed to have. CH2M HILL deploys a global delivery platform with respect to how we utilize our office structures. We focus on design delivery centers in order to deploy and deliver projects of this nature, and we branch out to large and small geographic offices, which then in turn branch out to even smaller client service offices. And this model is what helped us to facilitate the delivery of a project in such a short time span, but also allowed us to connect via ProjectWise. If there was no ProjectWise, there would be no ability to do this. This office model would not happen. We would have had to bring everybody into one office and facilitate everybody under our local network. So ProjectWise, I've showed this slide many times in many presentations. We want to create, manage, deliver, and preserve. And part of the ability with this project is there were so many project-specific elements that we had to understand, analyze, create, meet client needs, specific pumps, specific valves, specific architectural components, build them once, utilize them many times, preserve them in ProjectWise, and deploy them globally throughout the entire project. Very powerful. So our ProjectWise distribution network is, we basically have our corporate center, which happens to be in Denver, where the majority of the work of this project was being done, so that was convenient. But we basically have our caching servers allowing us to distribute across the entire infrastructure. We have distribution services set up, so anytime we wanted to create PDFs of the 2,800 sheet files, and this is just deployed with SS4. Right-click, create rendition, boom, 2,800 files created into up to 8 hours for it to run overnight, but it's on-demand server side. You just tell it to give you your PDFs and you get your PDFs. All meeting client standards, all set up as per what was required on the project. Equally, we have the ability to schedule iModel generation. So it takes the data provenance from every single one of those tools that we described, BRCM, PlantSpace, Bentley Building, InRoads, pull them all together into one package of iModels for delivery to the client, all automated overnight or on a scheduled service. The gateway server was so phenomenally powerful for what we had to deliver with this project in order to connect our external entities. There was never any question that anybody plugged into our project from anywhere in the world would be able to have true and honest data. So if I was doing the architectural model or had an external entity doing an electrical model, they would have the information guaranteed. They would launch from ProjectWise, from our ProjectWise, cache the information to their area, not only the information but the resources, and be working in a true and honest fashion. So the goal was to remove the need to stay connected to networks or cloud services. And part of that issue was due to our extended nature of this project. We were spanned all over the globe, internal and external to our live environment. We had modelers who some would be teleworking from home or remote locations, some from a site, many from external entities. So we've designed ProjectWise to say we're going to hit the cloud, get everything we need, enable offline working, and enable reconnectivity and synchronization of resources. So we've had greater working speeds, especially for those remote locations. You can work anywhere anywhere in the world, truly extending the term global. It can be. I can sit in the basement of my house and be fully connected to any and all projects that are housed within CH2M HILL. So CH2M HILL developed a tool called ProjectWise Resource Manager. We call this PRM. And we have that coupled with the Delta file transfer to facilitate this movement of information back and forth. And basically what we focus on is sharing of reference files and sharing of resource files. So the reference files are done powerfully via the Delta file transfer from ProjectWise. Any and all content can be cached locally and synchronized. Everybody's working on updated information. The hard part is sharing of resource files, especially with the introduction of AutoCAD resource files. So you think from a Bentley world, well, we can locally cache from ProjectWise, everybody's happy. But on the AutoCAD world, it doesn't exactly work that way. AutoCAD uses registry settings. So we had to ensure that our external entities and our client, as well as our internal Bentley users, were all reading from the same synchronized resources, a data set built for Bentley and a corresponding data set built for AutoCAD. So what we've done is we've basically said to a user, well, you access the collaboration system, check out a file. When you check out a file, two things are going to happen. All of your references, everything that makes that consistency on the project will be locally cached or updated to my machine. Then, with this resource manager, everything will be brought down locally to my machine. So you've got references and resources, and the ability to bring the resources down allows two things. I can point to my building data set, my plant data set, my P&ID data set, my BRCM data set, and my AutoCAD data set. Sorry, got to keep using that word. But I can point to all those data sets local to my C drive. I can now unplug my computer from the network and work. Or I can go to remote sites with real bad connections, hit this service, get my information, work, and when I'm done, check it all back in. Second time you do that, just like Delta file transfer, right? If everything's up to date, it's up to date, doesn't do anything, just opens up and continues onward. So this resource manager, it's a critical thing for us. What it basically does is, and I'm showing the AutoCAD data set here, but we basically download all of these folders. We've got a data set for each of the vertical applications of Bentley, and it basically brings down a compressed file, so a cab file or a zip file, one file. In that file, so the building data set is a great example. I bring down one file, contains 2,500 to 3,000 files within it. The plant data set, I bring down one file, contains roughly 1,000 files. All that resource manager does is it does Delta file transfer to synchronize that one file. If it's up to date on my computer, I'm good. The other thing resource manager does is it deploys that one file so that now on my hard drive, I have the actual physical files. So we're basically bringing down one compressed file, making sure it's synchronized, and deploying it to the C drive. Now my workspace configurations, my registry settings, everything that I need to make all of the applications run are all pointing to the C drive, which is quicker than pointing to networks or over the internet if I have a very bad connection speed. The other thing is there's consistency. So if my network name is Toronto 1 and yours is something else, that all doesn't matter. We're all working on system drive, which makes everything local, and it doesn't matter where I sit within the world, we're all connected and synchronized. The BIM goals for this project were pretty intense. The client required an IFC turnover to import data into Graphisoft. So I've talked Bentley, I've talked Autodesk, and now we had Graphisoft in the mix as well. So the critical thing there was to be able to take all of our data from the iModels, export them out to IFC, and ensure valid import of data into the Graphisoft interface. And we've been testing that throughout at every single milestone deliverable. We give them an IFC, we make sure that they're receiving and seeing the data that they're desiring to see. We used the Penn State BIM execution plan in order to plan what we were going to do, because this was a beast. It was, do BIM, do this, do that. It was, okay, well, let's stand back, pull up my wheel of BIM. And this I do anytime we want to plan something BIM. The Penn State plan says there's a goal, what are you going to do with it? We're going to make drawings. If we can't do that, obviously it fails. We've decided on this project that these are all the BIM goals we were going to do. So, by knowing that up front, along with the requirement to turn over IFCs, we were able to plan accordingly with respect to how we were going to deliver this project, how we were going to ensure valid modeling, valid data, and do a data check and validation throughout the course of the project using iModels and using various other tools housed within the BIM authoring apps themselves. Clashes were reviewed throughout, so we basically run the clash detection port either in EcoSim or in Navigator, just pulling in all the models. We pulled in also the plant and the BRCM models and ran the clash detections in one of those tools. Generated reports. The report showed whether they're hard or soft clashes. They showed whether they've been addressed, they're new or they're old lingering clashes, and we were able to present that to the client for them to understand that we are actually using the tools to try to make to try to succeed with respect to the implementation goals that we set forth. Everything was virtually modeled. Every single piece of information that we could, 2 inches or higher with respect to pipes and ductwork, cable trays, everything that would take up physical space had to be modeled. There's a requirement to pull data into an asset management system, and we're working on understanding what that system is going to be. So knowing that something is going to come down the road while this building's being constructed, we had to ensure that we're facilitating the ability to add asset tags to each component if and when the requirement comes in place. We modeled a workflow, which for time, I won't go through this in any depth here, but basically we have a BIM leader, that's that PAL role right there, project automation lead. So it's basically saying for the design and construction, we're automating various tools and systems, and we're going to have one person accountable for that ability to ensure that we can achieve our BIM goals and our deliverable turnovers to the client as the project progresses from design through to construction. So the client requirements, PDF, DGNs, DWGs for all sheet files. And that in enough is quite a delivery with respect to a turnover. They then wanted iModel, i.dgn files, as well as IFC exports for all of the 42 facilities. So we built a workflow and procedure in place to be able to turn that over. And the reason for that is they have some people internal that like using Tekla BIM site. Some use ArchiCAD. Others are familiar with Navigator. And there was a fear that going to IFC, you're getting some data degradation with respect to some of the plant components. So we wanted to make sure that the turnovers that we're giving are facilitating their immediate need and potentially facilitating future need by maintaining the data. There were 2D CAD standards for electrical and instrumentation deliverables that were unintelligent. So those were required. They had a robust AutoCAD data set that we were able to deploy via the resource manager. We had to customize the Bentley building parts and families. So they had a level structure that we had to build and specific part names, a project-specific PlantSpace SQL database for flow streams, as well as specific material components, and a complete project-specific OpenPlant P&ID for tagging and synchronization back to the flow streams. And finally, the AutoCAD configuration was for the non-intelligent schematics. So the outcome, data validation, and design coordination was emphasized throughout the duration, and that was a very critical piece. So 14 months of weekly reviews and understanding of what's being put into these models. Are our end deliverables being compromised in any way? Are we modeling as this thing is intended to be built in order to facilitate our BIM goals? Are the cost estimators able to get the reports desired from Bentley Building, from PlantSpace Report, from the valve and instrument list in Data Manager for OpenPlant P&ID? All the tools, there's various areas where you can report on data from. All of those had to send a consistent and robust message to get that information to the client or to our cost estimators to ensure validity of what we were doing. Are we addressing our clashes? Is there synergy between the 4 streams, building, civil, plant, and platform? And I've been at presentations where I always ask, hey, this is great in one, what about the other? And the ability to bridge building and plant is huge for us, because oftentimes there never is just a plant. There's always something around it. So seeing them all come together like this with valid data was impressive. And then the tagging scheme was robust. So in conclusion, the tools are a medium. And I think that's something that I like to stress a lot. BIM is a way of delivery. The tools are at our disposal. We never wanted to divert from the concept that this is a wastewater treatment plant with advanced delivery, advanced treatment systems, and a mission from the client to make this a masterpiece. And that's what we tried to deploy. We cover all multidiscipline, multiple databases, multiple authoring tools for BIM data, and everything is supposed to talk and be synchronized together. And finally, we can distribute across the globe, and my favorite is that there are no boundaries. It doesn't matter where we put teams. ProjectWise is our facilitator to say, I don't care where you are. Hook into my project and work with me. We'll make it work. Thank you. I saw the time ticking away. So, okay. Any questions? Yes, sir.
You clearly have gone a long way towards making information widely available. The task force concept worldwide is a great one. But how did you coordinate release of consistent information? If you have everybody in there busy working away, everybody's going to see something that's still in change mode. What about releases of information that only up to a certain point different groups can get?
Right, and that's, that's something where we manage the deliverable production and that output, and we have that role called the project automation lead, is that coordinator and facilitator of the deliverable milestone generation. So there reaches a point where our scheduling, our managers plan cutoffs and pause periods in order to produce those milestones for turnovers contractually to the client, and at those instances we have breaks in time. We can have version control within ProjectWise to mark the delineation of a milestone and ensure that we have a record of what information is locked or what was delivered at that milestone. We never have time to pause. So that's one thing. We know that throughout the duration of a project like this, people will always still be working, but versioning really helps to really say, okay, I'm working on a model and I'm about to make it messy. This is going to be what I'm going to deliver for 60% review. I'm now going to continue to make it messy, right? But it's that ability to stop and lock that really helps to facilitate quick turnovers.
So I have an associated question. How do you propagate and track changes?
Many different ways. So what we've struggled with is the design decision log as a separate entity outside of everything, right? So what we're trying to do is pull the design decision log as part of a commenting piece of metadata on components themselves. So we've been exploring various tools. I've actually been working on a research team at the University of Toronto with an IFC commenting tool where basically you can take one, if we had any of those IFC deliverables, we pull them into a web-based tool so everybody in the room can comment without having to know the actual BIM authoring software. These comments can be added to the IFCs and then those comments pulled back into the Bentley software. So it's a research program. It's something that we've been looking at to try to address this because it's hard when people are changing and comments are going outside of ProjectWise, inside of ProjectWise, on a SharePoint site, emails, right? And to bring all of that together is always a struggle and a challenge. So, the problem with IFCs is they're building based and not plant based, right? So the more robust they become, maybe there'll be more synergy with that. But I try to push people into the world of ProjectWise. If we were using OpenPlant, we could comment on component checkouts, which would be so powerful using that as I check the component out of ProjectWise, I make my change, I add comments, I put it back into ProjectWise, and I associate redline markups via overlay files onto those checkouts themselves. So there'd be a lot more power in the OpenPlant field, I think, to address plant-based changes. In the EcoSim world, the clash detection allows my commenting as well as metadata fields that I can attach to the data group catalogs in order to house the comments that are assigned.
Your idea of checking out and be able to work on a local drive was very interesting. But going back to the first question, I still don't get how you actually maintain the consistency of the design between the disciplines when you check out to a local drive. I can understand you're saying freezing a version, the model to a certain stage, and then allowing people to continue working. But I mean, if you're short of time, I mean, I would imagine you would actually you'd have to maintain some consistency within the disciplines.
Yeah, let me clarify. We're not working on the local drive. We're referencing the resources on the local drive. We're always working from ProjectWise. Okay, so that's a very critical thing. I have the ability, if I'm going to go on a plane, I can always export from ProjectWise, go on a plane for 8 hours, model, but there is that fear that I'm modeling on something that's changing. But no, the standard mode is we launch from ProjectWise, and in my launching process, I'm checking out what I'm authoring, but I'm locally caching what I'm referencing, and then all of the resource files, right? So everything for EcoSim, Bentley Building, OpenPlant, PlantSpace, all of those are all being placed in a compressed file on my local drive. Yeah, but I'm always working from a true and honest source, or else it's exactly what you're saying. And I've had that experience flying here, right? I exported my model. The minute I rehooked in the hotel, there's that fear of what has changed in the time I was offline. And that is definitely not a mode that we would say is norm.
We're at the top of the hour.
And I don't want to hold everyone back from lunch, so.
Lunch, yeah. I think in the winter gardens, but you'll know, you guys. So thank you so much, Brent.
Thank you, it's my honor. Thank you.